and welcome to this mini masterclass with Kirsty McNeill. Kirsty is the best advocacy person I've ever worked with, so thank you very much for joining us, Kirsty.
Pleasure.
First question, what makes a brilliant advocacy strategy?
So I think there's three main things to focus on. Firstly, being really clear about what you want. Secondly, being really clear on who can give you what you want. And thirdly, and most importantly, but most often ignored, why haven't they given you what you want already?
Fantastic. Okay, so how do I know what I want?
So a good ask, rather than a good slogan or a good name for your campaign, a good ask of a policy or decision maker is characterised by a few things. So firstly, is it urgent? Is it important? And is it theirs to do? Is it their job? Are you asking somebody for something they can actually give you? And a way to think about it, the thought experiment is this the sort of thing that would get on my to-do list? So can I imagine somebody writing it down? And crucially, can I imagine somebody scoring it off? So something like make trade fair, great slogan, bad ask. Something like protect all civilians, bring world peace, bad asks. So an ask would have to be something that you could imagine somebody calling people once you leave the door and saying we need to get on this. So currently, Save the Children has an ask, for example, about early years teachers. Once we pitched that to a politician or decision maker, we could imagine them saying, I get that that's important, I'm going to write it down, and then I'm going to call and find out how will we pay for early years provision, how will we get people trained, how long does it take to train them, how will we get them around the country. So if it's precise and capable of being broken down, and crucially they'll know when they've done it, it's a good ask.
Great, okay. And then how do I work out who can give it to me?
So when you're doing a power map, there's a few things to get out of your mind. Advocates often get this wrong. A power map is not a list of who you already know. So don't just reach for the lowest hanging fruit. It's not a list of who you know. It's not a list of who you like. It's not a list of who agrees with you already. If it doesn't have some baddies on it, it's probably not a power map. And thirdly, it's not a list of people who are paid to care about your issue. So often when we see a first draft of a power map, advocates will put on the official who has my narrow policy issue in their job title, or the youth minister, or the women's minister, or the development minister, who's not as powerful as the top official. They're not as powerful as the president, prime minister, or finance minister. So you're really trying to focus on, crucially, who's the decision maker, but also who do they listen to, and who can get in my way.
Got it, okay. And you said the most important thing was to work out why they haven't given it to you already. So how do you do that?
So in my experience, there's only 5 main reasons why you haven't won already. So the first is sometimes the system doesn't know about the problem or it doesn't know about the solution. So some examples here may be lots of people know there's a problem with sexual violence against women in conflict. What they don't know as much about is sexual violence against boys. So sometimes you have to say, there's an issue here that you haven't understood yet. Sometimes you're trying to sell the solution. They don't know about the solution. So when I worked in HIV, everyone knew there was a problem, but they didn't believe that you could get AIDS treatment into poor countries in the south. So our job was to tell them about the problem and the solution. Sometimes the system does know, but it doesn't care. It's got no incentive to act. So an example of this might be on civilian protection. So when we see civilians being killed in conflict, governments fundamentally don't believe that their citizens will be up in arms about that and will hold them to account for it. So our job is to build a powerful constituency that makes the system care. The third reason is sometimes the system does know and it does care, but there's a powerful vested interest pulling in the other direction. So a good example of this would be climate change. Most governments think it's a problem, most governments think they should act, but there's a really powerful constituency in the fossil fuels industry saying, don't take that kind of action. The fourth reason is sometimes you're just outcompeted. There's just a bigger priority. So if there's a financial crash or there's a war or a terrorist incident, your issue could just be competed out. There's not enough bandwidth to deal with it. Obviously, we have that in the UK at the moment with Brexit taking up a lot of bandwidth. And the fifth reason, and activists and advocates hate it when I say this, sometimes you're not getting what you want because what you've asked for is stupid. So it's just wrong in some ways. So there's a really significant unintended consequence. It's not possible under regulation. It's not possible legally, or you've got your numbers wrong about how much it would cost. So your job then is to go back and refine your ask to make it one that they can and will implement.
Thank you, Kirsty. Fantastic answers. One final thing we're asking everyone who appears on a masterclass is to recommend one piece of reading or watching or listening. So can you give us yours, please?
So a book I'd really recommend here is called A Problem from Hell by Samantha Power. She was a journalist, she was an academic, an activist, and eventually she worked in the Obama administration. And she wrote a book about the history of genocides and American foreign policy responses to them. Now that sounds like it's about one issue in the humanitarian sphere, but actually as a book for advocates, I think it's great because she talks a lot about the power of getting op-eds written, but also that they only get written when there's public pressure. She talks about understanding inside a bureaucracy, who's on which side, what is the interplay between departments. She talks about the importance of cultural leadership, faith communities, everything that you could think about when you're thinking about advocacy strategy rather than advocacy activities. She helps paint the whole picture. So even though it's quite long, please don't be put off. It's very well written, very easy to understand, and it's highly relevant whatever field you're an advocate in.
Fantastic. Sounds like a great read. Thank you so much, Kirsty, for joining us. Really brilliant, insightful answers. If you have any questions for Kirsty or for us, please tweet or email, and please do share this video. Thanks very much.